Hello everyone, and thank you for watching this video. This is Tech and Business with Belém Tamayo. I am Belém Tamayo, and today we're going to have an interview with Dr. Destiny Nock. She is an assistant professor of engineering and public policy and civil and environmental engineering at Carnegie Mellon University. And today's topic is going to be about defining energy justice and the connections between environmental justice, social justice, and the just transition. So if you want to learn more about this topic, something new from a professional, I recommend you to keep watching this video. Hi, Destiny. It's so nice to have you in here. Thank you for taking the time today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on.
Awesome. And the topic for today, as I mentioned before, is defining energy justice and how is the connection with environmental justice, social justice, and the just transition. So the first question for you would be, why is energy justice right now a rising priority to achieve environmental justice, social justice, and the just transition?
I think that one of the biggest reasons why energy justice is cropping up into, these other facets of life is because more and more we are seeing how energy is connected to everything that we are doing, right? So when you're thinking about achieving environmental justice, which is making sure, everybody has clean air, clean water, right? They don't have to worry about drinking polluted water from their home faucets and things. A lot of that has to do with energy, right? So we use energy to clean our water. We use energy to make sure that people have enough electricity to report a water issue. But on the other hand, the actual power plants that are generating that energy, if they are fossil fuel, right? Or if, for example, when we are fracking for natural gas, if that gas leaks into our water, then we also have an environmental injustice issue. But again, that ties back to energy justice, right? And so I guess I'll start off by defining energy justice. So energy justice is typically defined in three ways. So you have procedural energy justice, which means are the laws and rulemaking around energy and our energy system fair and inclusive. Then we have distributional energy justice, meaning how are the costs and benefits of having our energy system shared across society? So for example, if one part of society has the highest energy bills and is really, really expensive, then we would say that that's not distributionally just. We should share the costs of having this energy system that we all benefit from. And then the last piece is recognitional energy justice, meaning that historically there are certain parts of the population that have been on the losing end of some of these injustices, right? So when you think about low-income populations, minority populations, typically, those are the communities that are more likely to live near polluting power plants. They're more likely to have their water impacted. And we want to make sure that that doesn't happen and continue to persist in the future. And so then that ties into the second half of your question, which is how is energy justice linked to social justice, right? And in order to make sure that we are societally just, right, and people have an equal opportunity to create a healthy, safe life for themselves and their children, right? Energy can help people adapt to climate change, right? It can help people, mitigate the effects of heat waves and deep freezes. But if they feel like they can't afford their bills, right, and we have an unjust energy system, then people will not be able to access the technology to adapt to those to those inequities. And so then bringing that into the technology space, right? Like energy is technology, right? The energy system is probably one of the biggest man-made technologies, right, that we've ever done. And it is because it's a combination of a lot of technologies. But, when we're thinking about creating a livable planet, energy is a huge part of that.
Definitely. And the efforts you're making as an assistant professor on civil and environmental engineering, I usually introduce my my people, the people I'm interviewing first, but I would like you to link all what you just said with the efforts you are doing as an assistant professor on civil and environmental engineering.
Yeah, so as an assistant professor, one of my main things or main parts of this job is to do research into how do we build a more sustainable and equitable energy system. And that has to do with using data, technology to understand where is it unjust, right? And how can we make that better? So I will say that I am a data analyst and I build a lot of models. I love math. I love math. And so then we will use that information to understand, who's at risk of being near polluting power plants, who's more at risk of having like asthma because those power plants are potentially creating a lot more PM emission, particulate matter emissions, sulfur dioxide, NOx emissions. Where are those emissions settling, right? And how will that influence people and their health? And then, another research project that we've been working with a number of utility companies to look at people's energy usage and to understand who's not able to use enough energy. And so these are the people where it's like 20 degrees outside in Fahrenheit, and they may be keeping their thermostat set on 30 or 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And that is cold. Like, it is very cold. And so these are people that, they're huddled under blankets, they're trying to make ends meet, but they just feel like they can't afford to keep their house at a safe and comfortable temperature. Now, these people would most likely be missed in traditional, poverty identification, where we just look at like, what's your income? How much money are you spending on your bills? Because they don't spend any money because they're trying to not, they don't want to seem poor, right? Nobody wants to be poor. So those are some algorithms that we're doing there. And I think then from like a broader perspective, that really feeds into my work with Devio and DevStream, which of course is how I met you and how we, got to know each other so well. Because there we're like, looking at using this blockchain technology to identify like environmental impact, right, of different companies, social impact of different companies. And then with DevStream, looking at carbon offsets, one of the biggest things is how can we make sure that we are actually reducing the amount of emissions that we said we're going to reduce, right? And so I think that that's one of the reasons why, the different facets of my life are all kind of converging on like, we want to reduce emissions and we want to verify that we actually reduced it, right? So I think a lot of my research is how can we plan a better system? Right. And then for working in like the startup space, right, the more like for-profit space, it's more about like, let's verify that we actually did it.
Interesting. This it's very inspiring, the behind of what the motivation that drives you. And for our viewers, I would like to know what made you choose like public and civil engineering against all other careers. What is the fire behind it?
I think that for me, I actually will say that I don't think I chose it. I think that I am one of those people that I was lucky to find like interesting things. And I just kept following those until I got to a career that I liked. And I always tell, my students and just, anybody who's trying to ask me like, what major should I pick? I am probably the definition of somebody who couldn't make up their mind on a major. So when I was in high school, I really wanted to be a high school math teacher. That's all I wanted to do. Because I was going to save the world one child at a time, right? And my family was like, you're not going to make any money doing that, right? And so then I applied to colleges. I was like, I'm going to just do whatever I want anyways. But then I didn't get a scholarship to be a math education major. And my dad told me I could get a scholarship to be an engineer. So then I chose electrical engineering by process of elimination. So I basically was like, I don't know what all these other engineerings mean, but I think electrical engineering is going to be my best bet. And I did that. I also double majored in math education after I got admitted to the school and got my scholarship. But then when I went to actually teach in the high schools, I realized I did not like it. It was like being a glorified babysitter. And the students never listened to me. My feedback was I was too nice. I smiled too much, right? And that's when I was like, I don't want a job where I can't smile for people to take me serious. So then I stuck with electrical engineering, but as you can imagine, choosing it by process of elimination was not it's not something I love doing. So then after I graduated with my bachelor's, I went on to do my master's in leadership for sustainable development in Northern Ireland. And there I learned a lot more about sustainability. How do we measure it? What are different metrics, right? How does it look internationally? And then from there, I came back to the US and did my PhD in industrial engineering and operations research. And that's when I learned, how do you make metrics? How do you measure the sustainability of an entire power system? And I built a model to do that. And then from there, I applied to be a professor at Carnegie Mellon. But they actually don't have an industrial engineering department here. It was civil engineering, but a lot of my work is focused on energy, the environment, energy's impact on the environment. And so then that's when I decided I fit here, but it's really like a research fit as opposed to being trained as a traditional civil engineer.
That's a lifetime in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
That is so cool.